Recording in progress.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Maiden's Golden Thread. So I wanted to see maybe if we can just land together. If you have maybe an essential oil near you, maybe grab it. If not, we have lots of tea right in our hands. Mm. So when you're ready, just rub your hands together. Get them nice and warm. Slow it down a little bit. And just with all of this chi that we've just gathered right in our hands, just place it anywhere on your body that needs that infusion. And if you have an essential oil, I always have them on hand. You can do one little drop right on your pointer finger. But as I mentioned, if you don't have it, that's okay. You just tap your fingers together, get the chi to gather right at your fingertips. And we're going to place it very gently right here on the ear in this triangular fossa on both sides. Finding your breath. Just following it at your own pacing. Finding your own rhythm. Mm. And when you're ready, you can take these peace fingers and one in front of the ear and one behind. And if it feels better, you can actually just have your fingers facing up. And then we're just going to gently rub up and down. Remembering to breathe inside through the nose and out through the mouth. And then focusing on one side, we can just kind of graze our hands down the neck. A little bit of yin massage. And come to the other side. And I like to call this last step just making nice. Just kind of rubbing the ears 3 times. 1, 2, one more time. Beautiful. It looks like some of you already know how to do this. That's really inspiring. Yeah, it's just a form of Qigong, of working with your body's own energy. Mm. Okay, so I want to respect your time and the essence that you've allocated to being here today. So I'm going to go ahead and start this slideshow because I know that's why you're all here. Okay, let's see. All right, and maybe just a thumbs up to make sure that you can actually see my screen. Beautiful. So we are here at the free talk that I do every single year. And there's little things that I learn along the way from all of you. So throughout this time together, feel free to share any tidbits that you want to share either in the chat or raising your hand. I love hearing your voices. So today's topic is the Maiden's Golden Thread, and it's all about the cyclical wisdom that's rooted in East Asian medicine and Chinese medicine, which is the medicine that I practice. I also see Noemi here, who also practices the same medicine. Hi, love. All right. So, if this is the first time that we are meeting, my name is Kris, and I am a partner to an amazing husband. I have two beautiful sons who are very much in their fire years, puberty. It's very adventurous and fun, and I learn a lot from them. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese herbal medicine, the owner of the Way of Yin, which is an online education platform that really tries to bridge the wellness gap in female reproductive health. And I'm assuming that some of you are here, or maybe all of you are here because you definitely feel that gap. And so there's a sort of pull and a calling to fill that gap. Yeah. And I'm also a guide at womb school, and I see some womb schoolers here. Hi. All right. So let's name why we're actually here. Almost kind of the reality of where we're at. So most of the maidens that we know in our lives and in our communities, what do they receive at their first bleed, at their first blood?
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of times it's met with silence because there's no context for really understanding how sacred this threshold is. And so it's met with silence, maybe a few pads slid under the door. Some of the stories that I've heard are very, very sweet. Um, some of them are met with violence. Yeah, mm, which really shocked me. But most of our maidens are met with a sort of awkward silence, which actually speaks a lot in that silence. That this has to be hidden, or you're a woman now. You're a full blown woman, maybe at 10 to 15 now. So you're thrust into this kind of adulthood when you're still a child. And so this silence kind of breeds this inherited shame. And then that gets passed on generation to generation. Our culture has lost the honoring of this threshold. So, no ceremonies, no rituals that are held, not even like a conversation of a context of what it actually means to inhabit a cyclical body. And I imagine that a lot of the struggles that many of us experience living in these cyclical bodies, the challenges that come with it is because the context, the story is missing. The map is missing. And so I know a lot of us can relate to the maidens of today with our own story of how it was met with silence. So I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. So feel free to put in the comments. And then also, I'd love to hear how this topic actually inspires you, your why. And also, if you wanted to share your voice in the space, I welcome that as well. Yay. So Jessica's here, tuning in from Sherman, Connecticut. Bethany in Tucson, Arizona. Erica, Santa Barbara, California. I used to live in Santa Barbara. It's so beautiful there. Anna, oh my gosh, my love. How are you? All the way from Whidbey Island. There are things I wish I had known when I was that age. I'm listening as an auntie. Yeah, this is one thing that I hear so much is that I wish that I had known about how to approach and embody this cyclical body, to have that kind of context for understanding how deeply integrated our cycles are to nature. Yeah, I hear that a lot. Layla from Berlin, all the way in Germany. Stephanie from Chicago. Noemi, hi love. Charleston, South Carolina. Gabriella in Ashland, Oregon. Moon is in London, watching with 15-year-old daughter. Hi. So Anne Marie is in Pennsylvania. I work with children and young girls around food and nutrition, and I'm beginning to do more with girls about understanding and honoring their bodies. That's beautiful that you already work with young people. That's amazing. Amend is from San Jose, California, mom of a 7-year-old and wanting to guide her through her fire years with intention. Beautiful. So we have Erica. Bianca sent you. Beautiful. So Monsi, I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, lives in the Bay Area. My whole life, and I'm interested in this topic because I've been in the classroom teacher for 10 plus years and as a mom and someone who cares for many young people. And I think our school systems really try, but the focus there really is on sex education, which a lot of it is very fear-based. And I know this because I have two sons who went through sex ed through, I think it was sixth grade, and they came home so scared about sex and their bodies, and they had tons of questions. So I feel like it is, I'm not sure what the intention is with most sex education programs through the schools, but it's definitely not an embrace and a celebration of the body. It's a lot of fear-based education there. So, Bethany, I feel called to break the generational shame with my daughter and bring the magic in honoring our bodies as womb holders. Rona is from Brooklyn, New York. My why is what you just shared about no ritual or ceremony to mark this transition. It is also a form of remothering, reparenting myself. Yeah, it's healing that inner maiden within yourself. Absolutely. Sandeep, um, this topic, because I have nieces and want to be the positive influence to help others in my community and from my culture, beautiful, as it's definitely quieted. I think that's a reality and just kind of over culture right now. Yeah. So Gabriella is sharing I have two daughters and I'm here for them and their friends. That's fun. So no, Emmy, I had trauma with my first bleed. Mom did not speak to me. Would love to prevent this for other girls. And I also have been practicing Chinese medicine for 17 years and have treated so many women for diseases and trauma of the womb and sacral chakra areas of the body. I want to be on the preventative side of the movement. Absolutely. So Justine is sharing, She's from Montana, herbalist with a practice focused on menstrual and hormonal health. Beautiful. I see the disconnect from our cyclical nature and the lack of information that we received at menarche. I love the respect the work that you do, Kris. Thank you. Jessica is sharing there is so much fear and shame around the female body, especially of our blood. And it's so crazy because every single human being on this planet is nourished by this blood. Just like take that in. But there's so much shame around it. So there must be like a knowing of how powerful it actually is. Yeah. And somehow all seem to miss the plot that this is a space of miracles of where we all come from. Exactly. So, yeah, I think there is a real opportunity to reorient ourselves to a loving and celebrating, it moved, celebrating our cycles. And it begins with our children. I have a 6-year-old daughter and just facilitated my first workshop on the topic yesterday with 9 to 12-year-olds and their mothers. Yeah, that's beautiful. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, continue to share about your stories in the chat. I always go through the chat after these meetings. And this is like almost like a deeper integration of how much I actually learned from all of you. All right, so today we are going to talk about how East Asian medicine understands the maiden cycle as a golden opportunity, not only for creativity, because that's essentially what the menstrual cycle is. It's a creative cycle, but also how it is a barometer of our health. So it's a vital sign, and how deeply connected you are to your ancestors via the cycle and via the blood. Why this threshold of menarche is one of the most important, but also one of the most overlooked. What cyclical wisdom actually rooted in East Asian medicine looks and feels like. So we'll go over the 5 elements, the concept of Jing essence, and how that's related to the rhythms of the moon and earth seasons. And then, of course, we're going to talk about how you can start to bring this wisdom into your home, your communities, and even your work, which it kind of sounds like a lot of you are already doing. All right, so within East Asian medicine, we have a concept of 7 and 8-year life cycles. So through deep observation of humans in relation to nature, there were these observations that for female bodies, they cycle in years of 7, and for male bodies, they cycle in years of 8. So what that means is that every 7 years, there's like a bridge. There's a significant change where your development accelerates a little bit. And because it's a bridge, there is an opportunity to really enhance your health. But because it's such a tender bridge and it's not as stable, that if we don't have the right context for understanding what's happening, we can actually cause ourselves a little bit of harm. And all of these changes occur in the channels that originate in our lower abdomen or our wombs. So let's talk about what's actually driving the 7-year cycles. It's called Jing essence. Has anybody heard of Jing essence before? You can just say yes or not yet. So one of my mentors, Dr. Leah Andrews, described Jing as a concentrated creative power that is passed to us from our ancestors and parents through egg and sperm. So it's through our DNA. But Jing is so much more than that. It acts as our reserves of energy. It's related to our development, our hormonal and reproductive functioning. But since it's inherited from our ancestors, what also comes through are all of the struggles, the challenges, the joys, all of it gets passed on to us. And so we're kind of like our ancestors' dreams come true, that we are alive because they survived. And so we're here to almost live out their dreams for them. And then one day we will become ancestors for future generations, and our gene will be passed on. So let's talk about these two concepts together, Jing and the 7-year life cycles. So Jing is almost like the densest makeup of yourself, if you can think of it that way. And it moves in a cyclical manner through our 7-year life cycles. It's what drives it. And so the 7-year life cycles really offers like an insight into how we're actually progressing through our lives. And we might have heard the concept of individuals who are, oh gosh, what do they call it? Like when you early bloomers or late bloomers. So some individuals, their maps are kind of accelerated a little bit, and some of their maps are kind of slowed down a little bit. And that has a lot to do with your ancestors' gene and what you've inherited. But we have a lot of influence about how our 7-year life cycles progress in our lifetime. I think a lot of times we think of Jing and the 7-year life cycles as like this inheritance that we're just kind of stuck with, and our destiny is already written. But there is a concept of what's called post-heaven Jing. So from the moment that you're born up until present day and beyond, you have so much influence on how your Jing, how quality your Jing is. So of course you have this pre-heaven essence that comes from your ancestors, but it's known that you have actually two different kinds of Jing, pre-heaven and post-heaven. And post-heaven is your opportunity to change the stars for yourself. Yeah. So I just wanted to pause here and just make sure to see if anybody had any questions before we move forward. Feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Okay, we'll move forward, but if you have any questions at any time, just feel free to raise your hand. How many of you have heard of what's called the 3 golden opportunities? Yeah. So if it's new to you, along the 7-year life cycles, there are 3 golden gateways or 3 golden opportunities that really deeply influence your progression through the 7-year life cycles and the quality of your Jing. So those 3 are menstruation, postpartum, and perimenopause. So each month, each cycle is an opportunity to replenish Jing. And so menstrual blood is a manifestation of Jing essence, your Jing essence. And so it really does matter every month that you examine your menstrual blood to see what it's actually communicating to you. Is it really super dark and clotty? Because that could mean that it's super stagnant and it's not flowing well. It could be very pink and light, and that could mean that you have a bit of blood deficiency. It also matters how much you're bleeding. Of course, every cycle, in order to keep the life, death, rebirth cycle over and over again, we shed every month. So we lose a little bit of Jing. But there's a lot of practices that we can employ in order to replenish that Jing loss every single month. So the greatest Jing allocation goes towards postpartum. And yeah, I'm not sure if we have any mamas here, but I think that we can all kind of attest to, wow, yeah, postpartum is a doozy. So much Jing allocation goes towards conception, gestation, birth, and feeding our young. So much Jing gets lost during this process. And so that is why so many traditional cultures around the world had practices to help the mother recover fully. Because it's known that as a member of the community, and in order for the mother to be able to return fully, so much investment goes into their full recovery. Yeah. And the third golden opportunity is perimenopause. So it's said at the fifth 7-year life cycle, so 7 times 5, around 35-ish, our bodies start to kind of change little by little in how we create energy for ourselves. And we don't get this context. We're just told in our society, just keep pushing, just keep hustling. You could do this forever. And then we reach perimenopause, which is also known as our middle years. And our bodies are like, what is happening? Our reserves are just shot. And during this time, your body starts to rely on its deep resources of Jing in order to get you through this transition, which is the opposite of puberty. Puberty is when you come into your reproductive cycles. Perimenopause is this really long, spacious journey outside of your menstrual cycles or your reproductive window. And it's a big event. And you want it to feel spacious. You want your body to be able to acclimate. But because the changes are happening and the body is relying on your states of reserves, your Jing essence, which is held in your adrenal kidneys, if you come to the doors of perimenopause, but your reserves are completely shot, this journey is going to feel really wavy. Yeah. And so there's lots of practices to help replenish during this transition. And I always like to talk to people when they're at their fifth life cycle in order to kind of give the context for understanding what's coming so that you can do a lot of preparation. Yeah. All right. So this is a really fun graphic to look at. I know it's a lot to take in. So I want to invite you to kind of sit back in your seat and just kind of let the image come to you. You might notice the words of elements around the circle. Maybe the seasons. The menstrual cycle phases. Yeah. So let's start with water. The water element is related to the winter season and the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle. The water element also represents the womb, our first home. But then when we go through all of these seasons of life, we end up in our elder years. So we'll come back to that. So from water, we sprout into wood. So from winter, we go to spring. From menstruation, we go to pre-ovulation. And as far as our life cycles, these are our growing years. So this is childhood, birth to childhood. And we'll come back to this second spring. So from wood feeds fire. It's related to the summer season. In the menstrual cycle, it's related to ovulation. And this is the transition that we're here for today, is when our maidens move from wood into their fire years, into their blooming years. So from fire creates earth or ash. So here, the earth element is placed at the center, but in some schools, earth is placed right here. So it's kind of like an entire circle. But earth here represents our body that's experiencing all of these seasons. And it also represents our earth years, our nesting years. So this might be when we start to build a career for ourselves, maybe start a family, maybe kind of nesting in our new homes, making like this is like the comfort years, like where we really accumulate a lot and build in comforts for ourselves. So from earth, we move to metal. And this is the transition that I'm at here. So I'm in my autumn season of life, or the metal years. I like to call them the turning years. And it also represents the premenstrual phase. So after ovulation, premenstruation, and then we're all the way back to water. And then it just goes around and around and around again. So after our metal years, we do enter the water years, which is called the elder years. But I think a lot of times we think that it ends there, but actually we come straight back to wood and we call it second spring. So menopause in East Asian medicine has a different understanding. I think a lot of what we hear in our culture is of decline and decay. But in East Asian medicine, your blood that is sent to your womb every month no longer goes to your womb. It actually reroutes up to your heart. And so now it's used for energy in your heart work, your soul work. And so it's a different kind of context for understanding kind of post-menopausal life. So it's not like your life is older or over. Your life is almost, the second half is just beginning, actually. All right, so this is how the elements relate to each other, and everybody's going to get a copy of these slides. So wood feeds fire, fire creates earth, earth bears metal, metal generates water, and water nourishes wood. And then it just keeps going and going and going, because that's what sustains life. And this is my kind of nerdy brain that wanted to kind of map it out on a sort of chart. So you'll all get a copy of this if that's how your brains work better. So let's actually hone in on the maiden's journey. So what's happening when they move from their wood to their fire cycles? So around age 7 to 13, they are still in their wood phase, their spring phase. And it's really important during this cycle to support their kidneys because the kidneys are the root system of the body. And this is what's going to ground your growth. So if your kidney energy is not supported during this time with a sense of security and love, you could either not sprout or sprout too fast, like almost like a sense like you feel like you have to grow up really fast. Yeah. So there's an exercise that we do in womb school that's called Journey of Jing. And what we do there is we map out our 7-year life cycles almost to kind of deeply understand our own experience. And so there might be times where you're reflecting on your past and you can see very clearly which cycle was not supported. and why certain things are the way that they are till this day. Yeah, so it's kind of a really potent exercise to kind of map the journey of your Jing. So between this transition from wood to fire, your Jing begins to stir. And then, so in Western medicine thought, that's the activation of your pituitary gland. And so this is all written in your DNA, right? It's like a developmental progression. And in East Asian medicine, we call menstrual blood tiangwei, which is translated into heavenly water. And so it starts to concentrate. It's building and building. And then whenever that transition into the fiery year happens, it sparks menarche. It sparks the first bleed. And of course, this age that happens really varies. I've heard as early as 8. I've heard as late as like 18. So it really is a broad range. But I do have to say that more often than not, the age is getting younger and younger. Yeah, and that could be a lot to do with the kind of xenoestrogens that are running rampant in our environments that are kind of causing the menstrual cycle to come a bit sooner. Yeah. So let's pause here. I just wanted to check in with y'all to see how you're doing. See if you had any questions. So the first bleed is called when the red dragon descends. So in East Asian medicine, the first bleed is not only this kind of biological event that happens. This is when your Jing, your concentrated Jing, awakens. And really, what that means is that this ancestral essence that's passed down to every generation it really starts to move in a cyclical manner, in an entirely new way than it was before. So before it was just concentrating. Now it's moving, it's generating, it's cycling. And in a lot of cultures, maidens understand the power that they hold when they have their first bleed. But I would say in today's culture, yeah, it's definitely missing that kind of power aspect. So for the first time, they're almost like fully connected to that river of life that flows through them, through their lineage. Yeah. And I think a lot of times it's minimized to this kind of biological event, that's hidden. And because it has to be hidden, there's a feeling that there's some shame around it. Like, oh, I have to hide it. That means I have to keep it hidden. And if I show it, that's shameful. Or if it shows, through my clothes, then it's shameful. Yeah. But I think that we all know here that it's a threshold that's met and that it's an initiation. Hmm. So, how can we support this rite of passage? So, of course, these are, of course, my ideas, and I'd love to hear if you have ideas of how to support this rite. But I feel like the context, the story is missing behind living in a cyclical body. So, having embodied education, one that kind of bridges the gap between the missing story pieces, and how powerful it is to know that every single cycle is tied to nature. You have your own inner seasons, you ebb and flow just like the moon does. And there are times that are optimal for rest and other times that are optimal for activation and movement. Yeah, if we share this embodied education and also this kind of shared language, how would that shift how our maidens relate to their own bodies. And because the menstrual cycle is essentially a creative cycle, harnessing their creativity is really, really important so that they know how to ride the creative cycle. That there's an idea that brews and you have a seed and then you nurture it and then you plant it and then it manifests and blooms. And then it has its cycle where things start to slow down and you learn from it and then you start over and over and over again. Yeah. So I feel like in this way, then we almost take away the shame in how the culture kind of perceives productiveness. Because I feel like right now it's tied to our value is tied to productivity. But the creative cycle has its ebbs and flows. It's not like go, go, go all the time. That just breeds exhaustion. Yeah. And I'm a big believer in intergenerational spaces. There's so much that we learn as people that are older being around young people and babies, and vice versa. There's a lot that maidens learn when they're in a room full of elders who are aging gracefully. Yes, there's a real value in that. All right, so if you're interested, where do you begin? Because that might be one of the reasons why you're here. So, one thing that I hear really often is like, I don't even know if I'm even qualified to hold maiden circles or to talk about the first period. Um, but I would say that as a person who is cyclical and a person who bleeds, you are more than qualified. You have so much embodied experience to share. So that's first. And it might start just really at home and kind of exploring together with your maiden, naming the inner seasons together, and maybe even them witnessing you honoring your own rhythms. Maybe it could be in your practice, like if you have a practice where you have conversations all the time about the womb, and you can start to build in that cyclical wisdom into the conversations that you're having um, with your patients that might have maidens. Maybe in your community, it can literally start with just one conversation. There's a real hunger out there for these types of circles. All right. So if something today moved you, I would pay attention to that. And there is probably some part of you that already knows that this work is for you. And that's what attracted you here today to learn about the Maiden's Golden Thread. There's a recognition that something is missing, and maybe you could be the weaver to weave it together. So I'm going to pause here, and I just want to open it up to any questions that you might have. I'd love to hear your voices.
Hi, this is Erica. Um,
Hi, Erica.
Hi, I have kind of a unique situation because I had my daughter later in life and had early perimenopause and all these hormonal issues. So I'm like now in menopause with a 9-year-old. And so, um, yeah, and I just remember when I got my cycle and it was just like, wah, wah, like, n not a beautiful thing. So, it wasn't yeah, it was more you kept it in hiding kind of thing. And I don't want that for my daughter. And since I haven't had my period in so long, it's like, um, I'm having to remember and um, so yeah, that's why I'm here today and just to be able to present her all of this to her in a beautiful way and kind of um yeah, heal some of my own stuff.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's such a reality for so many people of like holding that tension between, oh gosh, becoming a mother and then also straddling perimenopause and menopause. Yeah, that's really tough. Um, yeah, so thank you for naming that because I think that is a reality for so many people these days. Yeah, and I mean, I just want to welcome you into your elder years, your water years. That's so beautiful. This is definitely a time for you to reimagine and dream and just like swim in your imagination to see how you want to spring forth into your second spring. So I just want to congratulate you on reaching that threshold. Yeah. As far as like your daughter, it almost kind of sounds like you hold so much wisdom that you probably don't know that you have. Um, and I wonder if it could just start with like an adventure in exploring together, like a new language for understanding the cycle. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to share? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hey there. Hi, Kristen. Thanks for this. This is awesome. I had a question about something I saw. I'm with you all on my phone, so everything's kind of little, but there was a word when we were looking at the cycle of the different elements, there was a word that said doyo next to, and I was curious about it. Wanted to hear a little bit more about what doyo is.
Ooh, I love talking about this because I'm an Earth constitution. So doyo means in between or transition. So this is why I love having Earth in the center, represented in the center, because it is that pivot. It's the resourcing. Every element dips into Earth in order to switch into the next season. Menstruation, it's like the Earth element, your body is the holder of this transition into pre-ovulation. Winter, in order to become spring, has to dip into earth energy in order to be resourced to push into spring. So, earth element is all about managing transitions. So, one really kind of amazing question to like ask yourself for reflection is how are you with transitions? How are you with change? And so this could be a real huge opportunity to nurture your earth element. And the earth element is all about digestion. How are you digesting? And it's not only food, it's not only what you're drinking, it's also information. How much information are you taking in? Are you allowing yourself to really kind of chew on it? Or are we already moving on to the next thing and like not really digesting it? Yeah, so that's what Doyo is. Yeah, great question. I did miss that part. I'm just gonna check on the time. So we do have about 5 more minutes. I just want to check if anybody had any questions.
Um, there's two in the chat. I wrote mine in the chat, and then there's somebody, Sandeep wrote one above me that I'm also curious about, as somebody who also haven't hasn't given birth.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Annie.
Okay, let me
Yeah.
check that. Thank you. Hold on. Um, oh gosh, I missed a lot in the chat. I think something was covering the little red dot. Oh, we missed Edith's introduction. Edith. Hi. Okay. Hmm. So Noemi is sharing, I have a client the other day that told me her friend is teaching her son everything she is teaching her daughter about her menstrual cycle so he may better care for the women he is with later in life. I love this so much. My boys know everything about the menstrual cycle. It's a little bit too much, but I think that is a really important um that's so important because we don't only need to know about it. The people that are around us that are males also need to know about it. Because eventually they're going to have people in their lives that are going to have these menstrual cycles. So I think it breeds a lot of empathy. Yeah. Mm, okay. Yeah, loving the idea of intergenerational spaces. Okay, here we go. So Sandeep is asking, does the cycle change if you have not given birth? Is there such a thing as too much Jing energy? And how would one check in with the Jing energy in the body? I hope this makes sense. It totally makes sense. Um, so because like postpartum was one of the golden opportunities, that's our greatest Jing allocation. Um, so it's kind of so yes, postpartum is like such a loss, and there's lots of practices to replenish it. But also the state of being pregnancy and gestation is 10 months of no bleeding, right? So there's also a window where you're kind of reserving that Jing loss. So for those that don't have children and who don't go through a postpartum, that Jing is reserved. Um, and so hopefully checking on the Jing would always be a question of how are my reserves doing? Am I burning through it in other ways, through like lifestyle ways, too much overwork, too much worry, too much like over stimulating activities. So there's other ways to actually damage Jing. And I named like the three golden opportunities because those are how we actually can see the manifestation of Jing loss. But there are other ways to actually damage our Jing. And so one question to always ask is how are my reserves doing? And so, am I able to handle stress like I did when I was younger? Am I tired all the time? Um, Another way is to actually tune into your monthly menstrual cycles. Um, a lot of times, Jing shows up as very light or sparse blood. And that's an indication that the Jing needs a lot of nourishment, of deep nourishment. Um, Sometimes there might be a feeling like, why does it feel like I'm aging faster than I was before? That could be like an indication that there's a little bit of gene depletion. Yeah. So there's other ways that it manifests. The three golden opportunities are just like really stark ways that you can kind of tune into like real gene loss. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. If not, just let me know. And then Anna, do you have resources we could use, look up, print out to lean on? Yeah, one of my favorite books is called Seven Times a Woman. I don't think it's in print anymore, but I think you can find copies like on used bookstore sites like Abe Books, ABE. Abe Books is a good one. Um, yeah, but that's a really great book that talks about the 7-year life cycles, your Jing essence. It was actually written by my mentor, Dr. Leah Andrews, the one that I quoted earlier about Jing. Yeah, that's really great. Um, if you want to learn about our life cycles through the lens of the five elements and kind of the archetypical lens, I really like the book In the House of the Moon. That's a really great book. I'm going to write these in the chat. 7 Times a Woman and In the House of the Moon. These are really great, great books. Gosh, I feel like there's another one. I think it's called Would. I'll look it up and I'll email you.
Okay, thank you. I
One that's
also,
like,
can I ask another question? Do we have time for that
of
quickly?
course. Yeah.
Um, just you're talking about how to support our Jing in the bridge that we're all kind of walking. But the first one was the menstruating one, and you talked about supporting the kidneys. But are there like by the time they become teenagers and are menstruating, is there something else to focus on to support their Jing at that point?
Yeah. So there's all kinds of practices to really, I'm going to go there, what you were talking about, this right here. So yeah, so it's really important during the wood phase to anchor in deeply into the kidney. And so what this really looks like is a supportive, loving home where you feel secure and you can actually be a kid. That's what helps to root kidney energy during these early growing years. As well as like, deep nutrition and, and those types of things. Um, yeah, and so then when um, somebody comes into their fire years, their beginning menstrual cycles are not going to necessarily be regular, right? They have to like get a little bit of practice before that regularity kind of jumps in. But as long as like we're teaching them how to support themselves while they're actually bleeding, that makes a huge difference in how they relate to their cycles. It like gives them like permission, like, oh, I'm in my inner winter time. I'm gonna stay warm more. I'm gonna eat warm foods. I'm gonna drink some warming teas. I'm gonna rest more. If I'm tired, I'm gonna take that nap, etc., etc. Yeah, so you could just start with like one menstrual cycle phase because at the beginning they might not know or sense like, oh, they're in pre-ovulation or they're ovulating or I'm in my premenstrual phase. That rhythm will come later. But yeah, focusing in on those bleeding days as like, wow, this is like real permission to like go into the winter time and really rest. Yeah, that's a great beginning.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So I do want to share about the offering, which who was it? Jessica shared in the chat. So Jessica was part of the early cohorts of the Maiden's Moon when it was just beginning, and now we're the fourth generation in. Yeah, so I do have a certification program where you can learn how to hold maiden circles in your community if that's something that really resonates with you. So it's 5 weeks together. We meet on Tuesdays for about 2 hours. Sometimes we do go over. And what I like to preface is that I share exactly what I do over the 4 weeks that I hold these maiden circles. But in that curriculum, I really encourage and invite you to find your own magic. What magic do you want to weave into your circles? And so the things that I've heard from people are I'm an aromatherapist. I want to work in aromatherapy. I'm a movement practitioner. I really want to, weave in movement into my circles. Um, Arts and crafts are some people's things. So they want to really kind of use their hands and get nitty gritty with like creating things together. But I also encourage actually diving into your own cultural traditions, maybe even asking the elders in your family what the culture was before. we started to forget. Yeah. So this is what we cover every week. The first is really talking about the rite of passage of menarche, how it looked in different cultures around the world, and then really kind of tuning in and getting intimate with your own kind of magic. What do you want to weave into your circles? So week 2 is all about you and befriending and getting to know your inner maiden and the things that they felt were missing and almost meet them in that and be with that. So week 2 is very tender. And we all hold each other in that space. Yeah. And we all bring like our maiden self pictures, and it's really fun to share that. Week 3, we really hone in on the chi of menstruation and how that energy runs along moon cycles and also the earth seasons. So we really hone in on that. And then week 4, we kind of dive into the bread and butter of how I actually facilitate the circles. And so this is where you really kind of gain ideas of how you want to do it. And at first, some mentors actually use my curriculum like verbatim. And as they start to gain confidence, they weave in their own magic eventually. Yeah. And I highly, highly encourage that. And then week 5, we kind of work together and really kind of figure out who to network with in your community. The kind of businessy aspect of it with like waivers and protecting yourself as a facilitator, and then actually launching it. How do you start to tell people about what you're offering? Yeah. So that's our journey over the 5 weeks. But you have access to a growing community. So right now, I think there's probably about, I think 130 people in the community right now, which is so beautiful. And we're everywhere. So we have people in Canada, all across the US, in the Middle East. We have people in Europe, South America. Yeah, we're kind of everywhere now. So I just wanted to open it up for any last remaining questions. And yeah, want to honor your time. I know we're a little bit over. Just gonna check the chat. Sorry, I'm gonna put on my reading glasses. Like I'm like revealing myself that I'm in my middle years. I don't know. Does anybody else have to wear reading glasses now? Okay, so Jessica shared. Yay, Sandeep. I'm glad it made sense. Beautiful. Aw, Noemi, thank you. Yeah, Noemi is a graduate also. Yeah, kidney in the wood cycle. Very, very important. Monsi, yay! Beautiful. Glad to have you. Yay. Okay. All right, loves. It was so good to be together. Yeah, you'll have access to the replay and the slides. I usually have that up within 24 hours or so. And just please, please, please email me if you have any questions at all. All right. All right. We'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.